Greetings, friends. What is up? And welcome to another episode of Into the Necrosphere, number 132. And on this week's show, I am going to be getting intellectual with Joost Vervoort and Johan van Hattum of TERZIJ De Horde. You guys will know that I am a big fan of their new record, In One of These, I Am Your Enemy. Reviewed it probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago. I know you guys all love it as well. And Johan and Joost very kindly walked me through not only their creative process, but also some of the themes and some of the concepts that make up their new record. And then, as usual, we went down various rabbit holes, all of which were thoroughly interesting. Great guys, great interview, and it's going to be coming your way very shortly. First up, however, THEURGIA are a band out of Venezuela who reached out to me to let me know about their new record, Virtue. It features the black metal stylings of Jonathan of Selbst, another band that I'm a very big fan of. And when I listened to the record, sure enough, the music on hand was pretty damn special, so I thought I would share some of it with you as well. This is a track off of Virtue. It's called Levitation. That was Levitation by THEURGIA. The song is of a record called Virtue. It is available right now on Vomit Records, and like I said, it features the musical stylings of Jonathan of Selpst, great band, and seems to me like hard times in Venezuela are spawning some pretty badass bands. Really like that stuff. Speaking of badass bands, I'm going to be talking about some new music later on in the podcast. Stick around for my review of Modern Primitive by Septicflesh. You will remember that I had Sotiris Anunnaki on the show about probably 3 or 4 episodes ago. So I've been looking forward to this record. Does it live up to my expectations? You'll find out in about an hour and 15 minutes time. And I'm also going to be doing my usual news, rants, and reacts segment. This week, I'm talking about new tracks by Krisiun, Belphegor, Denouncement Pyre, and a host of others. I might give my thoughts on a couple of the goings-on over the past weekend, including some of the things that I saw bubble up on Twitter about the Maryland Death Fest. So stick around for that. And when you get to the end of this podcast and you start thrashing around on the floor in anguish thinking, how am I supposed to survive a whole week until the next episode of Into the Necrosphere, then fear not, because my fellow horsemen of the podcast apocalypse have you covered. And I speak, of course, of the great Mike Hill and Everything Went Black and Necromaniacs, Brandon Legion and the Horrorwolf 666 podcast, and of course Cheyenne of Iblis Manifestations. Pretty much between those podcasts, your whole week is covered. You don't have to fall prey to the propaganda of the far right. You don't have to fall prey to woke far left podcasts. You can get balanced, wholesome entertainment from the 5 of us. And just as a side note, I will definitely say Necromaniacs has been knocking it out of the park of late. I think that is fast becoming the podcast I look forward to most every single week. So make sure that you check those out, show them some love and support, and if you do reach out to them on the socials, then make sure that you let them know that you heard about them on Into the Necrosphere. Also, if you really want to show your love for Into the Necrosphere, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. I post new episodes every Tuesday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, etc. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, you can head over to the Teespring store and deck yourself out in the finest, most stylish, most badass gear known to man. On that note, folks, I'm going to change gears and welcome for the first time, hopefully not the last time, to the podcast, Johan van, I was about to say Van Halmuten, Johan van Hattum and Joost Vervoort of TERZIJ De HORDE. If you ask anybody who's into the audio game, into the high-end audio game, like, give me a suggestion on something, they'll give you good advice, but prepare for a fucking deluge of stuff. Like, here's 12 different amplifiers I suggest you audition. And by the way, all of these interconnects are great. And, all of these speakers are worth looking at. Yeah.
Jesus. But the good thing was that one of them actually said, like, what do you want to listen to? And I was like, well, my music taste, which is tapes that sound like hiss coming from a cardboard box.
Yeah.
Until so he's like, oh yeah, well then okay, we'll skip the really high end ones. Like, okay, cool. And even then, I'd go. I mean, I'm happy now with what I've got, but like, I listen to these tapes on this particular amp, and I go, oh, suddenly you hear a dwindling riff somewhere. You hear a shout in the distance. It's like, oh, this is the best thing ever.
But that's the thing, man. It's like I said this last week on the podcast when I was talking about my experience at Munich, and I was like, for people that are into metal, I kind of feel like the industry is missing out on a big opportunity because anyone who's into metal, heavier music, they do tend to be more passionate about music than most, at least from my observation. And I've been in this for a long time, and I know statistically we buy a lot of extraordinary amount of vinyl. We seem to be leading the cassette revolution again as well. There's a lot there for them to kind of play with that they don't necessarily always do, which is a shame. That like the great thing about it is actually being with somebody or having somebody or seeing somebody experience hearing one of their favorite songs on a decent set of speakers with a great amplifier, something that's properly towed in, properly set up, when they hear it for the first time, like the look of amazement on their face is like, Jesus, I never thought that my music could sound like this.
Yep.
That's like the really fun part to me, and also obviously for myself experiencing it. Right, I've heard a Blaze in the Northern Sky on a hi-fi setup that would have cost in total well over £250,000. Like the speaker, one speaker cost more than this whole fucking thing cost.
But that's it as well. Like how much is it? And then you see this, like a speaker the size of nothing, and then still it sounds amazing. But yeah.
Well, there was one place, and Joost, welcome, by the way. We you caught us as we were busy talking about my extravagances at the Munich high-end hi-fi show last week. We saw one room that had, tiny speakers. I promise you, if they wouldn't be bigger than the actual drivers aren't bigger than a cell phone, and they had cables connected to them where the cable for 1 meter is €90,000. And it's like, that to me is nuts. Even if I were like Bezos level wealthy, I would still not spend money on that. But
that there's a legion of jazz fans now just going, only 90,000.
Oh yeah, and as I said, dude, the jazz never ends at these shows. You walk every single room that you walk into, the first sound that you hear is it's that slow fade in of the saxophone. Like, and it's like, oh god, my fucking someone. It's like someone is stomping on my spirit. So, but cheers, everybody, and
cheers.
I'm glad we finally managed to hook this up. As you will have, picked up from the review that I did of the record, I'm a rather large fan, although I do have a bone to pick with you about the length of the album, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But what I will say is this: the more I've listened to this record, the more there's something that kind of plays in the back of my mind. Every single year, there seems to be an album where it was just the right time for that record to be released. Like for whatever reason, all the stars just seem to align. There seems to be this organic buzz that builds around that record. And when it lands, it's like people had an appetite for it that they didn't even realize that they had. And I really do think that the new TERZIJ DE HORDE record is that record of 2022. So the first question I have to ask is like, how have you guys felt about the reception to the record? Do you think I'm talking shit? What do how did the build-up feel, and how did the aftermath feel when the record was finally out and you started getting, one after the other great review?
Yeah, good question. Well, so the build-up has taken a very long time. We've been in possession of some mix of this record for how long, Johan? Like 2 years or something, I guess?
Yeah, definitely. Drums were recorded like two and a half years ago.
Yeah, so we've been sitting on this record for a long time, and we've been very excited about it ourselves. But I guess that's us just being self-congratulatory. But the reception of the album, yeah, it has been pretty amazing, particularly in the sense of that it's really doing exactly. Well, it's hitting people in exactly the way that we would have hoped it hit people. People describe, they talk about the album in ways that where it's just like, wow, you get this. That's amazing. You really get this. You get this better. You get this better than we do sometimes. And that's really incredible, right, Johan?
Yeah. That's what happened with your review as well as several others. Luckily, that. With the previous record, we got good reviews, and everyone's got their bones to pick with elements of, and that's the way it should be anyways. And then overall, everyone was like, yeah, this is good. It's aggressive. It's interesting. Okay, good. And now suddenly people take that next step and then go into the philosophy behind it. They go into the literature. With every single record we've released, we've added essentially a list of further reading. And now they're picking that one apart as well. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And I do think that, because what you said, it seems like suddenly it was the right time and place, that because this record got pushed forward a couple of months as well because of vinyl and the problems thereof right now. and we've been just frankly astounded by how well it's been selling and how well it's been received, and I mean the amount of people coming to our shows and telling us about the record, and that song is the best one, that song is the best one. And that's what I love as well. Like we knew, we kind of, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of Joost now, perhaps, that like the title track, that's the one, right? That's the one I really feel that I'm most proud of. That's the one that encompasses everything we wanted to do. Yeah. But then still you've got people saying, yeah, that's a good one, but and that feels amazing. It seems to have a far wider reach than I personally would have anticipated at this point.
Well, it's interesting hearing how long the record had kind of been in the gestation period for as well. When we talk about that timing piece, because again, like I said, it feels like this was exactly the right time for it to land, and I kind of got that sense just looking at the album cover. It's such a bold, stark. It's an extremely confrontational album cover, but in a way that's totally different to anything that I can recall in the last 10 years or so. I mean, most of the stuff that many of us listen to, and folks who listen to the show no doubt listen to, Confrontational to us is satanic shit and pentagrams and everything. This to me, there's the realism to it makes it, I think, almost more impactful. And then that cascades through into every single thing. I mean, you touched on the title track. I mean, the title itself, in one of these, I Am Your Enemy, is I mean, I moaned so many times about like band names, album titles, lyrics and stuff like that. But that to me is just, it's so poetic, but it encompasses so many different things, but it keeps that theme of like, adversarial confrontation that which I love, and you hear that in the music and you hear that in everything else too.
Yeah, same. No, but it was a fairly well, it was clear from the start it needed to be a confrontational record, I'd say, right?
Yeah, I think that with the theme of the album, the last album, Self, is all about sort of self and identity and how it can be destroyed and transcended and realized and all these kinds of things. And with the theme of this album being about clashing political realities and sort of like the struggles and the conflicts of world making and world building and sort of power dynamics, it always had to be an aggressive title. And actually Johan suggested this title coming out of Borges's story, The Garden of Forking Paths, which is about essentially a labyrinth in which the forking is time. And so this is about multiple scenarios and multiple pathways in a sort of multiverse kind of sense. But then the conflict that occurs with these realities clashing, it's a perfect title for the album, I think. So thank you, Johan. Well done.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk to you a little bit about that, because as I read some of the notes around the record, and I don't know whether this was the record label or where I picked this up, but you touched on it now. The record is about dissecting power structures and world making. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the record essentially is about how there's immense power in people shaping each other's realities, determining for others what reality is, deciding and convincing others about the plausibility of certain futures, what is real, what is acceptable, what is the norm, etc. Johan and I are both teachers in different capacities, and so we are sort of I guess confronted with this reality shaping power in ourselves and in others every day. And yeah, it runs really deep, right? I think it's clearer than ever that, I mean, if you think about, for instance, what's happening in Ukraine right now, there is a political reality invading that country that maybe is very foreign. It's very foreign to many of our thinking about what the world is like, and yet it is happening, right? So there are just these completely different ideas about what life should be clashing, and that's a very sort of like easy example, I think, but there are many ways in which it's far more insidious, and in which what is considered to be sort of official sort of versions of the world are positioned as such, and alternatives are pushed aside as being completely unviable.
One of these things happening right now as well is where we have what's called critical race theory being banned in certain states in America, which literally means that teachers are forced or are forbidden to speak about, for instance, slavery, are forbidden to speak about the struggles for any kind of rights really in the past, because it might make people feel uncomfortable. So you are told by a higher power what you as essentially, I mean, teachers have power. We cannot escape that. You cannot tell these students what we consider to be, what the rest of the world considers to be historical truths. This is the truth that you're teaching. And then you as a teacher have to make that decision. Where do I draw the line? Which world do I want to build for the students to connect with, to live in, to take on as their own? And that's a dilemma. That's a horrible dilemma. And therefore also an interesting one, I'd say, because in this entire idea of world building and world clashing is really what is the world that I consider to be the world I'm living in? And how do I consider that? And how do I connect with my students about that? And how do I connect with my school board, with my country, with the parents, everything really? And therefore you have to make a decision. That's a confrontational bit as well. You cannot sit by and move along with the river, I'd say.
Yeah. Out of interest, how old are the kids that you're teaching?
I work in second year education. My students are between like 15 and 18, 19, give or take.
Yeah.
And I'm teaching at universities. I'm teaching students from 18 to 26, something like that.
And what do you teach?
Sustainability.
And Johan,
I'm an English teacher.
Okay, gotcha. I was about to say you're very well spoken. I should have picked that up pretty quickly.
Well, but I teach English and I teach both regular English and international baccalaureate. So IB, bilingual education for students, where the entire idea is really that I teach students to be critical consumers of texts, which that connects with me far more than regular. I love Shakespeare, definitely do, but I'm more interested in how are Shakespearean tropes formed in that particular context. What's the result now?
Yeah.
You need to have an audience for that as well.
Yeah, and in my case, Jackie, I said sustainability, but my focus is specifically on future scenarios and future pathways. So what is imaginable about the future? What is unimaginable? What is desirable? This is sort of my entire focus, and so that's also where Johan and I, as the lyricists of the band, where our interests sort of mix and merge, right, in the power of language to shape reality, essentially.
So these things we just touched on now, what was kind of the initial spark that sort of set you off to have this as the focus of the new record?
So it was a sort of natural move from the individualistic or the focus on the individual itself to moving into the social world. And then we just run naturally into these themes because this is what we're angry about. So with TERZIJ DE HORDE, it's the music is leading in an important way. The lyrics and the themes are very important, but the music in some way, or the energy of the music, is still leading. So and the emotionality is leading. So we work out what our sources of anger and grief and fear are, and we build from there. So when we move from the individual to the collective and sort of the interpersonal, this is what we naturally run into, this sort of thematic material, and especially given our backgrounds together.
It's never really a standard procedure. Like, indeed, the music tends to be leading. So we listen to the riff. We tend to have a basic structure of a song, and then either we look at, okay, what have we been writing over the past months, weeks, days, years, and what would be a natural fit. And then if you find something that connects, then we go into, okay, so what next then? This is a nice little verse of sorts, and then what? Is it going to be? Are we going to stick to this particular framing of the content? Are we going to move on to a larger, grander scale? And then we start writing, we start discussing. And sometimes it takes us 2 days to write something that we're happy with, and sometimes it takes a month and then it's thrown out anyways. But overall, we tend to be very quick actually with writing that which we're angry with, essentially.
Yeah. That is definitely something you pick up on this record. It's something I liked about Self. I think I might have mentioned it on my review as well. I liked that about Self, but I was glad that the spontaneity of that record was retained on the new one. The new one sounds a lot sharper. It's a lot more focused. But I think that the spontaneity, that it almost, that kind of live feel, that's still there. And it makes the music just hit that much harder.
Damien, he's our guitar player, and he did most of the sound for this, if not all of the sound for this record, and he'll be so happy about that, because that was fairly literally, I think, the one thing that we felt was missing from Self. As happy as we are, as proud as we are, still that particular live spark, energy, that hitting your face, that was so. This is good. Thank you. He'll be so
I was about to say, I hope I can make his day.
Oh, then, definitely.
I mean, one thing I was just busy pondering now as well, as we were talking about that, moving from something individualistic to something that really is a theme that's more overarching, it's more global, if you will. I would imagine that the craziness of the last, 2-3 years probably snapped a lot of that into focus as well. And whether consciously or subconsciously kind of drove you down that direction also.
Well, yes and no. I mean, we've been working on these songs for a lot longer than that, but it's sort of what has happened in many areas of life in the last couple of years has certainly made it more urgent subject matter, I would say, and made it click into place. So in a way, it's sort of like it's just coming together, I would say.
And I think also, I mean, people shouldn't get it wrong. I don't think anyone listening to this will, but the pervasive trend in modern culture to live in parallel realities, it's not something that just started with COVID. I think if anything, COVID just put a spotlight on it. But I mean, it has been something that's been building and building and building for a while. Why do you, from your perspective, where do you think a lot of this started? Why do you think over the years it has gotten so much worse? And what's your view on where it's, and this is a massively loaded question, but what's your view on where it is headed?
Yeah, very good question. Where did it start? I think that living in parallel realities is something that's always been there. And I guess, there's so much to say about this, right? But in some ways, of course, it has been amplified by modern technology, et cetera. But also, I think, by modern political strategies that are looking to polarize, that are looking to drive people apart. In some ways, to say something positive about it, I guess, in some ways, marginalized realities have also become more visible and have been able to become more visible. I think it's, and where it's going. Oh man, there's so many possible futures in that direction, right? It's very hard to say. I think, I see lots of possibilities for reconnection, but I see lots of possibilities for further separation as well. I think it's a very hard question to answer in terms of where it's going. And as a scenario thinker, people are always asking me, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future? And I guess I am intensely, darkly, nightmarishly pessimistic, as well as hopeful and everything in between all the time, And it's a difficult.
Yeah, I know. I as I was asking a question, I was like, Jesus, I've just thrown a thesis worthy question at you right there.
I would like to counter this though with a word of passion. No, but what I've been noticing over the past, that's it, right? I've been teaching the generation that Joost essentially receives afterwards. But not all of them go to university, of course, and they go anywhere. And what I've been noticing literally over the past 10 years is that there was a dip. There was a dip where there was a general passiveness. There was a general, because what you said, Joost, just now, that this has been around that living in alternate realities, the human desire to live in an echo chamber essentially is almost fairly natural, I'd say, and something that all major religions have been latching onto as well. Of course, you need to listen to the person and politicians as well. This is the truth because I'm saying so, and I as a teacher do that as well. And what I've been noticing literally over the past 5 years, because of these online communities, which are far more extensive than we as old geezers would be knowledgeable of. There's always a new app. There's always a new trend. There's always something new to hold on to. And what I've been seeing really is that more and more students of mine have been starting to doubt what they've been. They are in so many. They have spread among so many outlets, perhaps even that they go, okay, but here what I read, here's what I've read here about the same subject. So a critical mind or a critical mindset, I should say, for me has been showing more and more. So even though there's a dark pessimism about specifically older generations and how they've been handling themselves and the world, working with young people has still makes me hopeful.
Actually, I would really support that. I am much more worried about these sort of old generations and what they're doing to the planet and to everything at the moment, and how they are responding to technologies than the kids I'm teaching. They do give me. I mean, I my bubble is extreme because you imagine young sustainability science students, right? It's a very specific group, but they are incredibly motivated, incredibly activistic, but they are also realistic in some ways. So if you present something that's too utopian, they will just not accept it. They're very technology literate, as Johan said. So actually, the new generation does give me a lot of hope. It's a hard thing to put on them because if everyone points at the new generation, it sucks for them, right? But yeah, I would say so. I'm much more worried about the last hand gestures of a boomer, like a Putin or a Murdoch or someone like that,
Yeah, I mean, I think where a lot of this parallel reality really kind of became endemic, because I agree with you, it's always been there. I think where it became truly endemic was post 9/11. And maybe that's where I became more conscious of it. But I do remember the slow walk into the Iraq War. And from relatively early on in that, I there was something always nagging in the back of my mind, thinking something's not, doesn't sit right with me here. And this was before I'd watched Zeitgeist and all of that sort of shit. But you know what I mean? It's like you could just, I think anyone with a slight degree of cynicism would have looked at that and have gone, I'm not so sure what I'm being sold here is the right thing. And I remember one incident in particular that really sticks with me to this day. Here in the UK, they had a poll around whether or not the UK should get involved in the Iraq War if there were to be an offensive. The polling data said something like 68% yes, and 68% said no, and 32% said yes. Then they had two incidents that happened about a week after that. First incident was a blanket power failure in London. I've never once seen anything like that since. There's people walking around in the streets wondering what was going on. The following week, they had these massively panicked headlines all over the newspaper. They've had to pull tanks onto the runway at Heathrow because Al Qaeda is going to crash a plane into the airport. And I sat there looking at myself, thinking to myself, Heathrow is a reasonably densely populated area, and you have Surrey and things like that all around. If you were to shoot a plane out of the sky, there is a very good chance it's crash landing straight into a residential area. So what is the point of that? And that just made me think this is complete bullshit. However, sure enough, they ran the same newspaper ran a poll. The next time, the poll was largely in favor of the war, of involvement in the war, and very few people were against it. And it was in that moment I think that's where I first saw, and I was 22 years old at the time. That's where I first saw how easily manipulated and how easily led the average human being is. And then, of course, the war happened, and that was a complete and utter catastrophe. But I feel also like some of the political strategies and the political techniques deployed in that time, like, they had PR companies suddenly getting involved in, test phrases like, freedom fries and all this bullshit. All of that sort of stuff just got amplified and amplified and amplified over the course of the next 2 decades. And that brings us to our present point in time, where I would say in recent times, I've started to feel more positive. I've gone through times where I've been extraordinarily negative about where we're going, but I do feel like there's an awakening of the center, and I think there's at least there's an awakening amongst people, regardless of their whether they lean left, whether they lean conservative, that the center needs to be able to hold. We have to be able to have civil conversations with each other about things, and we have to be able to find meaningful long-term solutions to problems, because if we refuse to engage with each other, I mean, then the only other means of conflict resolution is a civil war, and no one wants that. And I for a period of time I was like, we're definitely going straight down the path of civil war. It terrified me. Nowadays I'm starting to feel a little bit more, I feel like the power structures, the elites, I feel like they've fucked up too much, and people have seen it, and more people have woken up to it and have gone, not so sure about this anymore.
The grey report will fall then. Speaking about elites fucking up.
Yeah. Well,
that's what baffles me more and more, that the fucking up doesn't seem to be that important anymore.
Yeah. It does. There's a lot that can get brushed under the carpet very, very easily.
Well, or it's not brushed under the carpet. It's still there on the carpet, and people just say, yeah, it's on the carpet. But have you seen that particular part of the carpet yet? And then that's it. And that's what I find interesting, because that entire idea of that the center needs to work together. We need to work together. Yes, I mean, we cannot avoid that. The time of the individual doing what they want should stop, but what's been happening now is, because of people panicking, is that what seems to have happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joost, is that we as humans seem to choose more and more strong individuals to lead us, that this is someone who can lead by example, or who can finally say the things that I don't dare to say, do the things I don't want to do or don't dare to do, which leads to even more division. The center has been torn apart because the center has been moving to the right for ages now. And then as soon as people on the left start to complain about that you get it. See, there's the extreme woke holding us accountable. And it's that lack of accountability that's tearing us apart more than anything else, I'd say. And as soon as we can start working on that, we are accountable again for the actions we've done, the actions we've taken. Then I'd say, then who knows?
I feel like the lack of material, social, economic, whatever safety and security that used to be there, that has been dismantled by extreme capitalism, and has left everyone very frightened and very unstable and very insecure in very real ways, is a big culprit of all of this, right? The hollowing out of all that security.
Social safety nets,
everything like that. Just leads to nightmare situations.
So I would agree with you to a point. I definitely think the reason why there's this move towards strongman or strongmen leadership is what tends to happen is when people's quality of life is significantly impacted, when people are becoming poorer, which right now, I mean, the real danger is because of massive, rampant inflation that's happening to a greater degree. They do, historically speaking, seem to be more susceptible to extremist thinking and radicalization. I would say I agree to a point around capitalism, but I feel like a lot of it has also been through just sheer government incompetence. I mean, printing
one
money
doesn't exclude the other.
If you think about the States as an example, printing money in mass, weakening the currency completely, terrible idea, and we see the consequence of it now. The way that they've approached energy sustainability in Europe, I think, especially in places like Germany, one, it emboldened Russia to be able to act, because they got to a point where they knew they had Germany not necessarily in their pocket, but they had them in a position where they relied on them for energy. The upshot of it now, the demand for coal in Europe is higher than it's ever been, which is a complete disaster, because it's undoing any progress that was made previously. Also, it's increased the price of fuel exponentially, and that increases the price of everything else. So I do think a lot of it is driven by government incompetence, and it feels to me like one of the big frustrations of my life with the government is they seem to be able to, and maybe this actually ties into your point earlier, Johan. They seem to be able to fuck up, and every single time they fuck up, they go, "Oh, well, we made a mistake. We're going to need a little bit more money to try and fix this now." UK is another great example of that. I mean, they've squandered money on virtually everything they've put their hand to, and every single time that they mess up, all right, now we're going to raid the pension pots. Now we're going to increase taxes on everybody. And in doing so, you're making people poorer. It comes back to that point that I made before. You're making them more susceptible to, wanting to have that battering ram. That they can say the things that they don't want. That they don't dare say, and they. It's almost like that resentment builds a degree of hatred that they want to let out somehow.
Mm. It's also interesting, and that ties back to the record tabs. What tends to happen then is that you get a movement which wants to abolish the old system. You want to build a new world. You want to build a new system, and that, in essence, I would say, is not a bad thing, because the systems of old are failing us as humans, it seems. Or perhaps is that too bold a statement, Joost?
No, I think that's fair. In some ways, at least, right? In some important ways. I think we're also losing a lot of systems that were really supporting people in the right way, and they're just being hollowed out and minimized. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was just going to say that now. So I think it's one thing to want to change the system. It's another thing to throw away what was good about the system. Yeah. And I think very often, the clamor to change comes at the expense of saying, well, we're going to change everything, burn it all down, and it's, well, some of it actually has worked pretty well. It doesn't necessarily need to be burned down. Maybe in time we can tweak it, and it can adjust to new things we've added to the system. But it doesn't necessarily need a complete radical overhaul. It needs, common sense changes. But it comes back to a great saying, this is, to me, the summary of all modern politics. The more the plans fail, the more the planners plan. For every single fuck up they make, well, we'll just create a new government body and tack it on top of the new one. And then
a lot of the work that I do as a scenario sort of strategist, whatever person working with governments all around the world, is helping people unlearn habits where they think they can predict something when they can't. They have all these ideas, all these notions about the future that don't stand up to much sort of scrutiny, and to teach people that they can let go of these images of the future is half of the work. So definitely the more plans fail, the more the planners plan relates to that. Yeah.
So can you give me an example of some of the scenarios that you're working on? I would assume the world is going to be like Judge Dredd. I was about to say, I actually thought the other day, like, which is the movie that's closest to what I think the future is going to be right now? And I'm almost starting to think it's going to be like Demolition Man, but I'm fascinated. I'm curious to know, like, some of the stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about there. So there, you can imagine there are sort of two types of scenarios to work on. There's all kinds of work on what future do we want. So what can we even think about in terms of what future we would want to live in? This is really important, because so much of the present day sort of discourse tells us that it's never going to be any good. It's always going to be terrible. You can't imagine anything else. There's no alternative to capitalism, blah, blah, blah. And to be able to work on alternatives, you got to have some idea about what they might be. What do you want to see, right? And for that, you can partially let go of ideas of how plausible or how achievable are they just first think about what you want and then worry about whether it's achievable. You can think about that later. There's a lot of work like that out there, lots of big stories, etc. My favorite type of scenario thinking around this is something called the seeds approach. So it's the idea of using seed initiatives, things that are happening now in the present, that people are doing all around the world, radically alternative ways of living, of making money, of agriculture, energy, whatever, that exist but are small still, and using those as inspiration to think about what those would be like if those would be sort of bigger scale futures, or if you would combine different ideas. So maybe you are doing something with food, I'm doing something with community organizing, and they're coming from completely different ideas, maybe completely different ideologies. Let's smash them together, think about how they could be combined, and building it, using that sort of smashing together of completely different things from the present to imagine new futures. But that's I guess my favorite part of the futures work. And in fact, I'm teaching a class now with 170 students where we're working with 20 countries worldwide to do this kind of work. It's very cool. The other and perhaps more metal type of futures thinking is all about imagining scenarios that just challenge our assumptions about the present. So these would be scenarios where lots of things go wrong, lots of things are horrible, all kinds of things that we didn't think about come up and you challenge us. So these are really, so it's like red teaming, it's like playing the devil's advocate kind of work. You're building many scenarios just to expose your own assumptions about the future, to rattle your own cage. And people make money doing that kind of scenario work. They just go to an organization, help them build these scenarios that just have futures in them that nobody ever thought about, and then just leave the organization panicking. But at least they're maybe a little bit looser around all the things that they think are going to happen and may not happen at all. And that's where all the wild, crazy scenarios are. And then an interesting thing to do is to use these sort of crazy, wild scenarios as a way to test your own hopes and dreams about the future. So I want this kind of future. I think that we'll get there through this and this and this path. But what happens if we're in a world where it's total technological and geopolitical chaos in some way? I teach a class with my sister actually at another university sometimes, and the students there are biotechnology students, and they live in a fairly lab-oriented world. So they just think about these technologies, etc. And part of what we're trying to do with the scenario thinking is to help them realize that, hey, there's a world out there as well. Lots of things are changing, lots of rules are changing, etc. And previously, when I taught the class, it would be a little hard to sort of like open their eyes, maybe, or it would take a little bit of time, let's say, to open their eyes to the fact that geopolitics may have an impact on biotechnology developments, right? What's allowed, what's not allowed, what's being traded, and whatever, and that all kinds of crazy stuff could happen. But this year, when I taught the class, I said, okay, we're living in a time, it's invasion of Ukraine, we have a global pandemic, etc. I somehow don't think I have to convince you that unexpected things can happen in the world that can have a big impact. And they were like, no. So yeah, that's basically the job, I would say. It's exciting and terrifying sometimes.
So I want to ask your opinion on something that is, I think a lot of people are starting to read about and seems to be very imminent. If you think about catastrophic future scenarios, and that's global food shortages, particularly. I think my theory is I feel the world is going to go down a path of deglobalization. I think COVID was the spark that lit the fire there. So you'll see this reorganization of supply chains. I think it has the potential to very, very negatively affect a country like Germany, for example, that has to import a lot of its food, and could leave them in a position where, if something catastrophic were to happen on the continent, they'd be completely vulnerable. They would be, completely food insecure. But then obviously also we see things like the knock-on effect of, the cost of fertilizer increasing, a third of the world's wheat supply, going out the window. What's your view on that? Is that something that you've touched on in your job?
Yeah, and definitely. And I would say that my view on it is that all of this sort of insecurity is going to hit the most vulnerable and the poorest of the world first. And that doesn't just mean the world's most vulnerable regions. It also means the lowest income people in countries, right? So I don't think, I think that looking at it sort of at a nation by nation level is less useful than thinking about how it affects people who have very little income. And I think that those are able, if there's money, a solution will be found somehow, and it will just get expensive and difficult and more limited if we run into these kinds of problems. I mean, if you think about climate change impacts, that's especially worrying, in terms of the world's most vulnerable regions, where climate change is and will be ravaging food production and having huge impacts on global food security. So,
I thought your next line was going to be, just learn to like the taste of human flesh, because that's where we're headed.
Yeah, human flesh.
Do you follow the work of people like George Friedman and Peter Zeihan, guys that are like real sort of geopolitical experts and that are in the business of predicting future scenarios like that?
Not really. I don't really believe in predicting.
Yeah. I will say, if you do ever read anything, make sure you check out Disunited Nations by Peter Zeihan. Very, very good. A lot of it is, I think there's a couple of generalizations he makes that creates a degree of fallibility in his approach. I mean, for example, neither he nor George Friedman predicted Russia invading the Ukraine. They did predict Russia, acting with animosity towards its neighbors, but I don't think that they thought that Putin would have the stones to go, full invasion. But I mean, things like what's potentially going to happen with China in the next 20 years, they're generally very, 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 very cynical about the country's future prospects, and then ultimately what that means for the rest of the world. But well worth reading. But that's a good segue into talking about things that you would recommend people read, because as Johan said earlier, like every record that comes out is like its own reading assignment. So again, I was keen to kind of maybe the way we could do it is talk in detail about about the songs, given that there's only 3 of them. And kind of,
Ooh.
I did throw some shade your way when I did the review for that, because I'm getting into it, I'm loving it. It's like, okay, where's the next song? There is no next song. So why was it so short? Let's get that elephant out of the room first and foremost.
Because it needed to be that short.
Yeah,
that's it. Full stop. No, I mean, this is something that we looked at as well, of course. But these songs are, as far as we were concerned and are concerned, this is what they are. Full stop. This is everything. Yeah. They have everything they need. This is it. So we could have added like some bands do, like, ooh, interesting 5-minute gloomy synth intro, and stuff like that. No, fuck it. No, this is it. This is also because the content of it itself is full on in your face. It needs to hurt and it needs to be over quick. And I mean, we tend to write long songs. That's what we do. So if we would have added another song, one of the songs that we are working, we started lying around, it would have been like a 45-minute record. And what we notice, how we experience this is, one, this would be sticking a song to it just because of time, not because of essence. Yeah. And also, the reason that we play 40-minute sets is that after that particular time, people just tend to go, Jesus fucking Christ, give me a rest. So I'd rather have a 30-minute record where you'd end with people going, fuck, just one more song, than people saying after 40 minutes, press pause, or just, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I was busting your chops earlier, but I did say on the review, as hopefully you heard, I did say I feel like maybe you guys felt like the album had said what it needed to say. It served its purpose, and it's time to draw the line there. Yeah. Which I respect that. I mean, as a fan of the music, I'm like, I wish I could hear more. But that's the point, as you say, showmanship. Always go out on a high.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit embracing our punk roots as well. It's sort of like punk sort of aesthetic of writing shorter albums is something that we've come to reappreciate, you could say. So I think that's part of it as well. That sort of punk energy that's on the album, comes out well when it's shorter.
So let's talk about the first track. And again, one of the things I love so much about your lyrics, having kind of looked at them, I've always loved lyrics that don't spoon feed me their meaning. You know, I'm from the school. I know you guys are similar age to me, so you're probably the same. Where I loved nothing more than sitting there poring over the lyrics over and over and over again, trying to what does this mean? And then you start to sort of interpret it in your own way, and then it becomes that much more special. So, but the way in which these lyrics are written, I think, is brilliantly open to interpretation. We align our stars in his reflection is the lyric that really sticks out to me on, and the pronunciation is Chiron, right?
Chiron, yeah.
Chiron, all right.
Yeah.
See, because my ancestry is Dutch, I can pronounce your names perfectly. Joost
Yeah,
Vervoort.
no, I was seriously surprised at that.
You are Johan van Hattum, but I Chiron I'll fuck up. But anyway, Chiron.
Yeah, it's Chiron. I mean, it comes from the Greek Chiron, so that in Dutch it becomes Chiron. But again, I would say just pronounce it any which way you'd like. Yeah.
Why did that specific lyric stand out to you?
I think it's about the way that the lyric is written more than anything else. Like when I listen to the music, the lyrics actually the lyrics don't kind of rush out at me whilst listening to the record. It's you'll hear specific parts, like musical parts that you like, and then you go, what the fuck's he saying there? Because the way he says it is so cool. And then you go back, you're like, I love the rhythm that he put into that piece, or whatever the case may be. But as I was just going through the lyrics generally, that was a lyric that really kind of stood out to me, because much like shitty drumming, bad lyrics can put me off a song immediately, especially my old age. I said the other day, I don't want to ever hear a lyric like "I am the one." If I see that in a song, I'm just discounting the band altogether from now on. But it's like I said, there was just something about that lyric that just struck me in its poetry. It struck me in its, like I said, in sort of it's being open to interpretation.
Nice.
But it also really feels like it sets the tone for the rest of the record as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and Chiron is a song. It's a song about our power, the power of teachers and the power of people passing on ideas about reality to next generations. And Johan and I, as both as teachers, the song is sort of purposefully ambiguous about whether this is a good or a bad thing, because it's both, right? Power of teachers can be used for good and for ill, and these things are sort of mixed up. And we're very aware of this, I think, ourselves. And it's a great way, I think, to start the record story about sort of reality shaping power when it starts with education. Yeah.
I think that one of the first times you kind of realize as a person as well that there are people with other ideas, and then they are in power, and then do you then need to agree with your parents or the teacher? That entire idea is that first idea of world building as well, I'd say. And that's for me as well why I love the idea of having that song there. It's also because it's a good slap to the face. This is really a punch going, okay, this is it, this is the record, now fucking follow us.
Yeah.
I mean, it has that as well, but I mean, I agree with you. I had the same that, because it's a typical Joost in that sense, lyric wise, that the entire idea of aligning stars in its reflection, it has a multiplicity of connotations there, which all seem completely impossible, but we all want to achieve in some way, perhaps. And that let me, I mean, that's my personal interpretation. That's what we want as well. I mean, we had an interview which touched on this a couple of days ago as well, where it's like these lyrics are so opaque at times, so difficult at times, that don't you fear that you might lose people over them? And it's like, no, but that's it. Like we want people to think about them. They might be a bit difficult at times, but one, this is who we are, this is what we want to do, but also please own them, take them on, and feel and experience what you feel and experience.
Yeah.
So again, thank you.
You mentioned being teachers. Both my parents were teachers as well. So my dad is he was a lecturer. They're both retired now. He was a lecturer in applied sciences, and my mom was an English teacher. I'm just curious, have any of your students sussed to the fact that you are in a fucking brutal, relentless black metal band?
We don't make I don't make a secret of this. No, good, because what I want to show them at all times is this is who I am. So I throw everything at them, and sometimes sorry, like, but no, this is, I play horrible music and I love it to bits. You know, this is who I am. So, and what I tend to have is that we share music, because my angle is always music and food are the two ways in which humans tend to share emotions across cultures. So this is who I am. You know, send me a song that you really love, and then we can talk about that. And then you get I mean, that's how I learned a wide array of artists as well, modern artists, because as you said, old geezers, we tend to have, you know, this is what we like. And then you get a hip hop song, go, hip hop. Oh, I remember the 80s. You know, it's horrible. Then you get a new track and you go, fuck, this is really good, because this is another young kid angry at the world, angry with himself. And then a student tells you, they spoke to me because of. So, I mean, we're playing songs all over the Netherlands right now, and in Europe, hopefully soon as well. But every time I get one or two former students, and sometimes an actual student standing there, and I go, I didn't know you liked black metal, you know, and they go, oh yeah, I heard a couple of mixes on Spotify, which I loved. And it's like, fine. And then they experience that show, and they go back a better person.
A better person. Hearing is a little damaged. Traumatized for life.
Traumatized. Never handing anything in for English again, but that's fine. Yeah.
There is a professor of international relations. I think that's his discipline at I think it's the University of Manchester. Ian Bruff, who's a friend of the band, and he has written a paper that very weirdly is about TERZIJ DE HORDE a little bit as well, and about me. I don't know. It's a long story, but anyway, another thing that he writes about in the paper is using different genres of music to explain different levels of critical thinking in a discipline. So in international relations, what he does is he lets the students listen to some classical music, some Haydn or something like that. And he's like, oh, this is classical international relations. And then he's like, okay, so this is what alternative international relations sounds like. And he plays them Kings of Leon, which of course is nominally an alternative band, but very accessible poppy shit. And
so it's complete garbage, but
garbage, exactly. But the point is like, okay, it is arguably alternative. And then he says, and this is decolonial, feminist, super critical, etc. International relations, and he plays Converge to the students, and the students have never heard of Converge, and it's this incredibly visceral experience to them. And he's written a paper about how you sort of can make people bodily feel the difference between sort of different opinions in these fields by using music for that. And I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, no, I work in a very different job to what I do on the podcast. I mean, I'm like in the most buttoned down corporate job ever. But one of the things that I have learned over the years is just exactly like what you said, Johan. I don't shy away from any of it anymore. Nowadays, I just joke about it. I do these things with because I run a global team, so I do these meetings like once every couple of weeks where I literally just jump on a call. I say it's basically just coffee, and you ask me whatever you want, sit and drink coffee, talk shit. They asked me the other day, what music do you listen to? And I was like, well, it's nothing you're going to like, number one. Number two, it will sound like a lawnmower being thrown down a flight of stairs if I play it to you. But people do seem to, I think, if you don't take yourself very seriously and they but you also don't shy away from it, I do think they tend to accept it a lot more easily than people that it's like, oh, that's private, it's my business, or you get quite we've used the word confrontation quite a few times tonight, but like they get quite confrontational about what they listen to. It's like their thing. I do think a lot of it, and I mention that because it was something I wrestled with for a big chunk of my early probably my early career, I always felt like I had to turn the volume down and stuff like that, because in the UK they can be very judgy about those sorts of things. But over the years, I've just, volume is cranked all the way up, and people accept it or they don't. But I think the way the attitude that you have when you share that with them is what they're going to take away from it. I was going to say that my experience with teachers were very different when I was young. You either got caned or we had this fucking insane, and this is very random, and we'll get on to the next song. We had this fucking insane thing that used to happen once a year in the school that I went to, where this Christian group would come and minister to the school for like a whole week, and then you would give them these, or they would have this one day where you could submit anonymous questions, and then they'll stand up in front and answer the questions. One person submitted the question, "Is it sinful to masturbate?" And so the guy who was the leader of this group, his name was Swace. He read the question out loud, and he said in Afrikaans, he said, "Yes, it is absolutely wrong to masturbate, because masturbation leads to homosexuality and bestiality." And then he said, look, he pointed to his wife. I mean, the dude's like 22 and he's already married.
Oh.
Points to his wife. "Look at my wife. She is there because I waited." When he said that, I mean, the bestiality thing was funny enough. But when he said she was there because I waited, I was fucking screaming with laughter.
Oh, no.
I was also sent out of class because I was disrespectful, but still.
We both come from the south of Netherlands, actually, and that's Catholic country. And I was a very precocious child. I read a lot. I still read a lot, but I read the entire Bible when I was 9.
Yeah.
And then we had a pastor coming in every 2 weeks. And I still remember that. I was sitting there with my Bible going, okay, so I've got a couple of questions. Like this, here he says you shouldn't, here he says you should. Here the same. And that was, I think, 10 minutes. And then I was taken out of class. And now every time the pastor came by, I needed to do other things in class or in school. And I was like, seriously, the same thing. I was like, but I just want to know. I mean, I still think it's weird and it's stupid, but why then? And no one ever explained the why. And it was so, and that's for me really something that drove me as a teacher, becoming a teacher as well. That's the only question I want them to ask, why? Because if I can't give them a why, then I'm a bad teacher. I'm a bad person. The why is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. So then we move on to the second song, which you described as kind of the centerpiece of the record. I mean, it literally is, as well as figuratively. In one of these, "I Am Your Enemy," I won't use a quote out of the song, but like I said, I'll just reiterate again, the title to me is certainly title of 2022, without a doubt. But can you expand a little bit on that song?
Yeah. So in one of these, "I Am Your Enemy" is sort of the core thesis, I think, also of the album. This is really the song about clashing realities and the power and the conflict that are involved in creating new worlds and creating new realities, and the violence and the conflict that are also inherent in clashing imaginations, and even being able to use your imagination or not to create something new. So this is really what the whole song is about, and there is sort of a dynamic, I think, in the lyrics of the song between this sort of like finding new worlds, creating new worlds, and sort of these things coming back into conflict with each other. So there's sort of diverging paths and then paths clashing again. I think that's sort of the core dynamic of the song, which is why the title fits so well.
Yeah. And then you close off with the record's longest track, "Precipice," which is kind of it's the name suggests it to be quite ominous as well. The last line in the song, in death worlds of exception, it sort of seems to stop on a cliffhanger, or at the very least at a kind of proverbial crossroads. But again, you want to talk about that in more detail?
Yeah, I can start with that. So Precipice is partly inspired by the work of Judith Butler, postmodern feminist, and by Achille Mbembe, who's a Foucauldian philosopher, And then they talks about necropolitics, the power that is inherent in determining which people should live or die, what wielding death as a form of political power, essentially. And so the song is essentially about who gets to, and there's a concept of the grievable, who is grievable, and that's a Judith Butler concept. Who do we consider to be human? Who do we consider to be worthy of grief? How do we wield? Who wields sort of those necropolitics, the power of death? Whether some people are allowed to be considered, to be allowed to be alive, to be where that's even a concern, whether they're alive or dead, etc. So this is really about people who are pushed outside of the category of respectable life, essentially, I would say. Anything to add, Johan?
No, it's also the longest track because this, I'd say this is one that took us the longest as well, because the ending needed to be immense. But and again, I'm happy that you picked up on that. We didn't want it to end as a gloomy, doomy, pessimistic acceptance of death in someone else's power. There is a chance of taking back that power. There is a chance of becoming grievable, perhaps even, and that is, I mean, it sounds like you can get it if you want to, and that's not how I mean it, but more of a the fight back will pay off, and that's something that I do think that in the riffing, because that was really that glorious riffing that starts, I think from like minute 4 or 5ish onwards, that when Damien came along with that riff, that we felt, oh, but this is it, now we can stand up again and fucking get into it. And that's, I mean, lyric wise, I mean, this is mostly Joost's and gorgeously so. The entire idea of this necropolitical concept of deciding on who is allowed to live and who is permitted to die is a very current concept as well. Looking at Fortress Europe at this point in time, just to name an example, this is a ridiculous and horrifying concept that we, quote unquote, seem to feel okay with hundreds of people dying every day on seas everywhere because our representatives have chosen to see them as not worthy of living in this specific country. And that entire idea of what does that do to a basic idea of humanity, and how does that basic idea of humanity influence the world that you're trying to build and the world that you're trying to pass on is, well, it is horrifying, and it is fucking ridiculous. And I mean, you have, if you're not angry about this, I'm not really sure what you're doing. Yeah.
So we've spoken about kind of the response to the music, but you also, like every other band, went without playing live for a lengthy period of time, and then went out and started playing some of this new music. How have people responded to this, and how's it been for you guys to be back up on stage again? Especially as a band. I've unfortunately never gotten to see you yet, but as a band who has such a fearsome and formidable reputation as a live entity.
Best feeling ever. Just first and foremost, it's really reactions have been so well, but really also I do feel that energy that we put in, we can take that with us on stage and share. Again, Joost, most of us have a hardcore punk screamo background, so you want to connect, you want to throw yourself at the people, you want to be there, you want to be punched in the face if need be, and that aggression, that intensity is. I mean, it took us 2 years, and now we're back again, and it hasn't changed, I think.
I think so. It's been very interesting because we've played a few shows during the pandemic, when things were locked down and whatever. We played one show in particular where we played 3 times 30 minutes for an audience of 50 people that kept rotating. So they kept sending new groups of 50 people into this pretty massive stage, and everyone was sitting apart and nicely seated on little benches. And that was a very strange show to play.
I was just about to say, like, you guys are one of the last bands ever where people should or could remain seated while you're playing.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very interesting to play that show. It was it was better than not playing a show, I would say, but especially at the time. But yeah, I mean the first standing show we played was Roadburn, and right, yeah, that was the first one. It was amazing. It was 2,000 people. It was together with Ghoul, our friends from Tilburg, playing sort of a mixed show where this is sort of like a doom drone, black and doom band, and we played a few songs, and then we have this whole project which involves the drum tracks of each of the bands being used to create a new song by the other band. So we have this slow doom drum track by Ghoul that the drummer played live, that we wrote a song over called A Robe of Words, and then Ghoul also took Chiron's drum structure and they played a song over that in their own style, which sounds very interesting because it's a fast drum track. Obviously in live Richard played those drums, and then in the end we played two of Ghoul's sort of doom songs together with both bands. And you just imagine there are two bass players, four guitarists, two drummers, and one of the Ghoul boys is a singer, and I'm the singer there on stage as well. Just playing this massive, devastating show for 2,000 Roadburn people. Yeah, that was fucking amazing, right? That was really unreal. And we were like, okay, this is after that day, we were like, yeah, this is pretty damn unique that we were able to do this and be back at it,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard that Ghoul split is going to be coming out at some point this year as well.
That's right. Yeah, this year. We don't
hopefully,
know, hopefully,
could be early next year.
Yeah, it will definitely be ready, but if it will come out as a different.
I'm about to say depends on the vinyl factory backlog, and
as always, yeah.
And so, what else is on the cards for you guys over the course of the next year or two? I mean, firstly, I sincerely hope we're not going to wait another 7 years for another record.
It's not the intent. No.
Yeah. What's the plan for the next 2 years?
Yeah, we are in a sort of good flow of writing and producing. I think we found in one of these Enemy, we found the way to make a good record in a sort of structure that we like. Basically, it involves Damian working his ass off until he almost dies, and that we're fine with that. It's his problem. Yeah, we're working on new music. The idea of I don't know, don't want to say too much, but the idea of writing slightly shorter releases works for us. So we might be doing that. We are also interested in lots of collaborations like we did with Ghoul. So you might be seeing lots more of those in the future as well.
Yeah, the basic concept of what we want to do next is there. We talked about that. We're writing now. Hopefully next 2 years, if I'm completely honest, is a couple of shorter releases, loads of touring. And then like in 3 years time, 4 years time, there's a new full length and we can tour even more. That's how I would see it.
Yeah. And the boundaries between a shorter release and a full length, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah, no, but like what you said, collaborations, that would be like a one-off, a single, it could be a digital single, could be whatever. And then we'll see what happens. But that's something that with Self, we noticed that we were so focused on producing what we would assume would be a full-length record that in the end, we might not have gotten from it what we wanted. So rather now, it's the idea is really we're writing songs, we're putting them together. We've got an idea, we've got a concept, we've got an overarching path to follow, and then when it's done, it's done. And I mean, we talked about that, of course. Like the entire idea that you say, okay, and now we've got 30 minutes of music. Well, we need to add another song. No, this is done.
Yeah. I like that actually. I mean, I think part of me likes it. Like there's a degree of confidence in that, right? It is what it is. It doesn't need anything added to it. It doesn't need anything taken away. It just is what it's meant to be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Lots of attention per song, lots of detailed work and focus per song.
Yeah. Because what you said just now is that Damian works his ass off, and we're very, very critical. So the entire idea is really that he has a riff, and then it takes us 8 million hours to hone that down to something that we can all live with. But that's really it. That the entire idea is every single person in the band will only play it if it is the riff they need to play, they want to play.
Yeah.
No, I mean, nobody's got time for playing a sad, wonky riff just to be, I don't know, on
Just a
stage.
filler or
No,
something.
if I'm on stage, I need to fucking dive into it and die on stage, or not be there. I mean, no one wants to play in Kings of Leon, right?
No, definitely not. All right, gentlemen, on that note, thank you so much for your time. It was an absolute blast, and we will hopefully at some point do it again down the road.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man, really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
I'm glad we finally got it hooked up. And I love the album, like I said, but short for my tastes, but I can forgive that. So, all right, take care of yourselves.
Cheers.
Take care, man. Thanks.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
The song is Chiron. The record is In One of These, I Am Your Enemy. It's available on Consoling Sounds, and the band, of course, TERZIJ DE HORDE. Thank you so much to Johan and to Joost for coming on the podcast and for being such great and entertaining guests. And I do feel like there's probably a part 2 in there in the reasonably not too distant future. But great dudes. And once again, I just want to stress, if you've not listened to this album in full yet, you owe it to yourself to do so. It is 29 minutes and 35 seconds of pure fucking brilliance. Let's talk now about some new music. I mentioned at the start of the podcast that I was going to talk about Modern Primitive, which is the 11th full-length record by Septicflesh. It is available right now on Nuclear Blast Records. It's the sequel to Codex Omega, which they put out in September of 2017. And if you listen to my interview with Sotiris Anunnaki, you will know that I was rather excited about the record, as was he. I thought that his explanation of some of the themes on the record, I think, were particularly relevant, particularly around things like, how the human race is devolving, how we are kind of, experiencing technological evolution, but at the same time, we're kind of going back into our most primitive states. How this manifests in the music is with a record that, frankly, doesn't really steer clear or doesn't really change much from the standard Septicflesh blueprint. And I could probably say right from the off that if you didn't like Codex Omega, you may as well skip over the next 10 minutes of the podcast, because there's no difference, no change here to what they did previously. And part of me kind of misses that. I wish that they would bring in some of the more subtle goth, maybe not post-punk, but like if you listen to a record like A Fallen Temple, there's a song on there called Marble Smiling Face that almost has like a Sisters of Mercy kind of vibe in the verse. On Ophidian Wheel, the title track to the record has this fucking cool guitar lead, right before the chorus. I do wish they would bring some of that back. I feel like a lot of those traits that they used to have kind of fallen by the wayside as the orchestra becomes a more essential part of what Septicflesh does. But then again, when you have the services of the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra at your disposal, then subtlety isn't necessarily something that you want to spend that investment on. And this is not a subtle record by any stretch of the imagination. It starts off with the 1-2 combo of The Collector and Hierophant, both outstanding songs. Both have, I think, if I had to pinpoint a difference between them and anything that I heard on Codex Omega, they definitely have a more live feel to them. And I remember watching Septicflesh at the 2019 Incineration Fest and thinking to myself, in comparison to when I had seen them previously, which was probably, it must have been about 6-7 years prior to that, there was a lot more confidence in the band. They seemed to enjoy being on stage and felt a lot more comfortable in their own skin being on stage. I definitely feel like that is something that has come out on Modern Primitive far more so than it was on Codex Omega. There's a real live feel to some of these songs, even though they have all of these massive elements going on behind them. A Coming Storm is one of my favorite songs on the record, and that's a great example of that. It sounds like it was almost written to play live, and you can imagine how cool it would be with that orchestra behind them, because all of the experimental stuff, all of the symphonic stuff from the orchestra is there in absolute, in all its glory. I think everything on this record also sounds just absolutely massive. I mean, the orchestra obviously is huge, but the production really helps for that. The sound stage of this record, if you listen to it on a hi-fi, will absolutely blow your mind. It does have a slightly warmer feel to it than maybe Codex Omega, definitely than Titan and the Great Mass, which preceded that. And overall, I think it's an absolute triumph. Like I said before, I don't think if you are not a Septicflesh fan, this is suddenly going to change your mind. I do think in comparison to Codex Omega had higher points than this record, but it also had a couple of songs that just seemed to kind of be a little bit faceless, maybe because of how good some of those high watermarks on that record was. There's a song on Codex Omega, for example, called Martyr, which is just absolutely exceptional. In my opinion, one of the best songs that this band has ever written. But then, the rest of the record doesn't really ever quite meet that standard, in my opinion, even though it is very good. Modern Primitive is more sort of even in its dishing out of quality material. The record feels like it's more even-handed. It doesn't feel like there's, particularly any songs that are kind of particularly weak or particularly, better than than the songs that they play beside. The only song I'd say feels like a little bit like a throwaways is the second to last track, Psycho History. That was maybe one that I would have ditched off the record. As it is, the record is actually almost 10 minutes shorter than Codex Omega, which for Septicflesh feels weird. They feel like a band that should have records in excess of 50 minutes. This one clocks in at 38 minutes. But like I said, I enjoy it. I think the performances are great. I think Soterius' clean vocals sound fucking brilliant, better than it's ever sounded in Septicflesh history. And I think that overall, this really sounds like a band who, even 11 albums in, are on the ascent in terms of their confidence, in terms of their ability, and in terms of the way that they deploy the orchestra. There is not a band on this planet that do it like these guys do. You can look at Dimmu Borgir, you can look at Fleshguard, Apocalypse, boring. You can look at any band who's done this, and they sound Bush League by comparison. I think it's down to the fact that the Septicflesh guys are, musically qualified. They have musical credentials far beyond any other band. But they really do this exceptionally well. So if you think that what they do, or if you like what they do, if you buy into the Septicflesh proposition, you are going to fucking love this record, and you are going to love the song that I'm about to play. I mentioned it earlier. It's my favorite song off the album, and it's called Coming Storm.
From committing
That was Coming Storm by Septicflesh off the album Modern Primitive. It's available on Nuclear Blast Records. The link will go in the description to the podcast. So if you head over to their Bandcamp and you buy yourself something, whether it's a t-shirt, whether it's a thong for your girlfriend, whether it's some music, you let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere that sent you. Tell them how much you loved the Sotiris Anunnaki interview, and then say that Seth needs to come on the show next. By the way, it is another fucking fantastic album cover, I believe, painted by Seth. And I would also say Seth did the album cover for the new Machine Head, and as much as the new Machine Head sounds like shit, and I don't like Machine Head as a band, the album cover rules. Let us now, folks, whisk ourselves away magically through the power of the internet to my favorite metal website, Metal Storm. So, as usual, we kick off with a rummage through the archives of Metal Storm. And the very first headline, Khold debut new song. I have said before, really looking forward to this record. Khold are a band that might not be pushing the boundaries of innovation, but they are always very, very entertaining. It says here, as part of their next full-length installment, Swartzen, Norwegians Khold present another new song in preview. The new outing will be out next month on June 24th via Soul Cellar Records. Let's give it a whirl. I fucking love that. 2 thumbs up for me. Love the riff, love the vocals, I love the beat, the groove, the swagger, everything about that is fucking great. Like I said, you know, it's not going to win prizes for originality, but it sounds very cool. And this whole record so far has been sounding very cool. The song I just played is called I Demonens Bok. Fuck knows what that means, but let's give it a couple more seconds.
Even morens smak. Han väntar dig ut i tålmodig ro.
I don't know if it's coming through where you are listening to this on, but the bass production on that tune sounds so fucking cool. Like really, really stands out. Just everything sounds good. That is, like I said, super excited about that. June 24th. Remember the date. Undoubtedly, I will be talking about it on the podcast. And who knows? I might see if I can get one of the guys in the band to come on the show as well. But anyway, yeah, very cool stuff. Let's move on. Evoken to embark on European tour in July and August. I know that Mike is a huge fan of Evoken, and they've played a couple of Tombs, I should say, has played a couple of shows with Evoken. How nice would it have been if they could have joined Evoken on this string of European shows? It says here, this coming summer, Funeral, Death Doomers, Evoken will be heading out to Europe for a string of shows. The trek begins with their performance at Gothum Open Air Festival in Slovakia on July the 22nd. The complete itinerary is available via a flyer below. Again, must confess, Evoken is not a band I've paid a huge amount of attention to, but upon Mike's very glowing endorsement, I will most definitely check them out. The Cult new album finished. The Cult guitarist Billy Duffy confirmed in a recent interview with the Yorkshire Post that the main bulk of their long-awaited new album has been finished and mastered. Why do I talk about the Cult on a podcast that is all about cult KVLT, it is because the cult is fucking great. I don't give a shit what anybody says. They've got some awesome songs in their back catalogue. Going all the way back to, I think the song is called Big Neon Glitter. That was off one of their first records, Love. But yeah, great band. Belphegor release Virtus Ascenaria Prayer track and video. Diabolical death metal squadron Belphegor have released an atmospheric video for their brand new track Virtus Ascenaria Prayer, which serves as the second single from their upcoming studio album The Devils, due out on June 24th. The video clip was handled by Thomas Keplinger. Belphegor, as I have said many times, I think has yet to, in my opinion, release a record that would score higher than a 5 out of a 10. And I don't think they actually have a song that would score higher than 5 out of 10 either. I got a scathing message from Evan about this earlier today as well. And just to preempt him being here and saying it, boring was the verdict from his end. Now, I don't know whether I'll feel the same. I've not listened to the song yet. And 2022 has been a year of crazy things. Watain released a record that I liked. Dark Funeral released a record that I liked. Can Belphegor ease their way or work their way into my good graces? Let's give this a whirl and find out. So far, Evan is definitely not wrong. It says here, Helmuth states, our new video for the track Virtus Ascenaria Prayer pairs Belphegor's bizarre live procession with an intimate ritual of sulfur, passion, and blood. For he shall rise, heretic goat of flesh and lust. It stands for what Belphegor has always stood, liberty and the everlasting spiritual and bodily manifestation of carnal sin upon this rotten world. So much detail, yet so little information. Let's carry on. Fucking hell, man. They are really dragging the intro of that song out as far as they can. Somebody really, really loves that opening riff because they extended it by, I think, just over a minute. And I don't think it's all that great, to be honest. I just want to keep listening until the vocals start to hear if there's anything to salvage here. Bullshit. Sucks. Again, I know there'll be people that'll like it, but I think it is complete muck. Right, Exosphere. I'm definitely not listening to a band called Exosphere. They look like friends of what's that shit fucking Soulfly ripoff band, Ectomortem or something like that. But Anyway, not for me. Evanescence lineup changes confirmed. Ooh. Much more intriguing. Krisiun announce Mortem Solace record. Brazil's kings of death metal, Krisiun, are pleased to announce their new studio album Mortem Solace to be released on July 29th via Century Media Records. Recorded at Family Mob Studio in Sao Paulo and mixed and mastered with Mark Lewis in Nashville, Tennessee. The cover artwork was designed by Marcelo Vasco, and in anticipation of the new album release, a new track entitled Serpent Messiah is being launched today as its first single and can be seen in a powerful video directed by Estevam Romero. I love Krisiun. I did not like their last record. It just was an album that kind of sort of drifted off into nothingness for me, to be honest with you. And I really, really liked everything that came before that. So it was a bit of a disappointment. But they're one of those bands where I will forever be excited when they release a new record, even if sometimes they drop a dud from time to time. I also didn't really like Assassination very much. But what I will for sure say, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but if you have yet to see Krisiun live, you owe it to yourself. If you're even remotely into extreme music, and you don't have to be a fan of Krisiun, but to witness live what these three guys are able to do on stage is something to behold. It is fucking unbelievable. I saw them open for Dark Funeral, and I also saw them open for Behemoth. And they mopped the floor with both bands to such a point where there was people starting to walk out of the venue when they were done, because you look at it and you go, how the fuck do you follow that shit? So anyways, let's give Serpent Messiah a listen. I am very glad to hear that they're putting out a new record, and I really do like the cover of this album as well. But anyways, I'll shut up and play some music. So I like the. It sounds like they're getting a little experimental on this record. If I were to judge by that intro, and it's interesting that this song is the second song on the record. So you would assume that intro might potentially be something that spills over from the first song on the record, which on this track list here says it's called Sworn Enemies. When the song actually kicks in, it's pretty much Krisiun business as usual. But it's good Krisiun business as usual. It sounds less like the band is on autopilot, which is what I thought was the case with the last record. It's them basically doing everything that they do really well, which is fast, aggressive, uncompromising, badass death metal. And, all three of these guys technically are just absolutely, amongst the elite of the elite. And I would love to have one of them on the podcast. I'm going to see if I can make that happen, actually. But cool song. I like it very much. Let's listen to just a 30-second snippet more.
Desire, how all the doom and children of life.
don't know if it's just me, but there's a bit of a old school Krisiun vibe on that song as well. Like I'm getting Conquerors of Armageddon vibes off that song. In everything, the riff, the speed, everything like that. But yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. And like I said, they're one of those bands where if they play live, make sure that you go and watch them. They are fucking spectacular. Next headline reads, Carl Sanders to release new album this summer. Nile mastermind Carl Sanders is pleased to announce the release of his new solo album, Saurian Apocalypse, on July the 22nd. It'll be his first one in 13 years. Check out the haunting first single, The Sun Has Set on the Age of Man, featuring guest guitar virtuoso Rusty Cooley. I know that when he makes solo records, it's a significant departure from Nile. He tends to kind of do, like his last solo record was, you know, these weird sort of Egyptian influenced instrumentals, which actually I really liked. So interesting to see what he does here. The rest of the article reads, Carl Sanders says about The Sun Has Set on the Age of Man. The Sun Has Set on the Age of Man is a great choice for people's first exposure to this album. It's the opening track of the new Saurian record, very cinematic and an eerie mood setter, much like the score of an opening scene of a sci-fi movie. The song serves as an introduction for the many twisted journeys of the album that follows. It uncannily evokes that feeling we all get right after the sun has gone down and night is upon us, conjuring an awareness of the ancient evolutionary dread of the unknown dark and its terrors that have been imprinted on the human psyche since early prehistoric man first realized that there were things in the night that would prey upon him. Let's give it a spin. I'm really liking the percussion on that song, and I note here that it reads, the track also is very special to me as it features two dear longtime friends of mine, original Nile drummer Pete Hamura on percussion, and legendary guitar shredder Rusty Cooley on guest acoustic solos. That percussion sounds very, very cool, and I like the vibe of it as well. Very dark, you know, not metal whatsoever, but that doesn't matter. It's If you followed Cole's career since the early days of Nile, you can definitely tell that, or you would have a hint at least that it's him who's at work here. It sounds like this could be the intro tape at a Nile show, but I've maybe it's just me not seeing it, but I do sometimes feel like Cole doesn't necessarily get the recognition that he should get as a musician, because I mean, the guy is a technical virtuoso, but as a songwriter and as somebody who has genuinely in-depth knowledge of music composition, melody, you know, combining elements of different styles into something that sounds really cohesive. I mean, the guy is fucking extraordinary. I mean, he really is, in my view, on a different level to most. But I like that. I think that song is very cool. Tell you what, it could have suited really easily, this Dune. And by the way, I'll just reiterate again, if you've not seen it yet, Dune is absolutely fucking spectacular. Can't wait for the second one. But yeah, I like that very much. I think Denis Villeneuve should reach out to Old Man Carl and get him to compose some music for Dune 2. Denouncement Pyre reveal new track in anticipation of the upcoming album release Forever Burning, due out on June 17th. Australia's black death metalers, Denouncement Pyre, have debuted a lyric video for the newest single, The Liberating Fires of Moloch. Let's give it a listen. You will recall that I wasn't particularly impressed with the first single that they released for this record, but I'm a bit more positive about this one. I still don't really like those vocals very much. It has that typewriter vocal, a hint of that typewriter vocal style that I told you guys I don't like. You know, I think that could have sounded better, but well, what I'm hearing is definitely not offensive, and I think it's something that the more you listen to it, it could potentially grow on you. Yeah, like I said, not bad. I think the vocals could be a little bit more impactful, but I don't mind it. Let's move on. Cinery, debut new single. Israel-based thrash collective Cinery present a new music video. Cinery is such an absolutely unbelievably crap name for a band. Stoned Jesus. I don't think I've ever heard of Stoned Jesus, are releasing their new track called Porcelain. The new music piece is accompanied by a video clip the band created themselves and can be viewed via the official Season of Mist channel, right? Season of Mist and Stoned Jesus. So there's two reasons to give this a listen. The song is fucking long though, so hopefully they get a move on sooner rather than later. Quite liking the vibe there. It says here, lead vocalist and guitarist Igor comments, Porcelain was one of the last songs I brought to my bandmates for the upcoming album, and they loved it instantly. In fact, we all loved this track so much that we decided we'd play it live even before the album's out, so now it all makes sense releasing it as a single. People told me it sounds like 2000's Porcupine Tree covering 2010's Swans, but to me it's just another amazing chapter in the Stoned Jesus songbook. Hope you'll enjoy it too. I'll let it go for another minute or so. just a wee tad. And let's see what it sounds like when the song is properly kicked off. Vocals are what I want to hear. So we jump to the middle of the song. I'm liking the sound of that. Took a while to get going, but I do sometimes think in this setting, you know, me listening to the first minute or minute and a half of a song, sometimes it's a bit difficult to make a proper judgment on a track. But I like that. I like the sound of it. I'll definitely be adding it to the list of things to look out for. Nemec, former singer, died. Mircea Gabriel Eftemi, guitarist of Danish metalers. Nemec confirmed via his Facebook page that the band's former vocalist, Guillaume Bedeau, passed away. Guillaume was part of the band in the years between 2006 and 2013. I've met Mircea. He was a very nice guy. And I've seen Nemec play live. They were one of those bands where I wouldn't have thought it until I actually saw them live, but live they were an excellent band. Never really something that I'd want to listen to, you know, outside of that environment, but cool band. And definitely my condolences to his nearest and dearest. Candy revealed Transcend to Wet track. Transcend to Wet, the second preview tune from the Candy's forthcoming studio release, Heaven Is Here, has surfaced online. Check it out via YouTube or Bandcamp. The new outing is out via June 24th on Relapse Records. Generally speaking, Relapse Records, even though there are many, many, many misses in their back catalogue. Well, not back catalogue, in their output. I do still always want to check out anything that they put out. So let's check out Transcend to Wet. An instant miss. That sounds fucking terrible. Seor, or Sur. I actually got it right last week, and now I'm back to saying Seor. Anyways, launched Beyond the Wall song and video. Not going to look at this. We had Andy on last week. Great dude. And a very well received episode. I'm surprised actually by how well it was received, considering just how much fucking sniveling and hate there is, unfairly so, for the man, in my opinion, on the socials. A bit like one of my forthcoming guests, Naz Alchemeth of Ecclese. I saw that there were idiots on Twitter trying to organize flash mobs at the Maryland Death Metal Festival to beat up anybody wearing an Ecclese t-shirt, which I thought was the height of pathetic. But I mean, I heard Naz on my homeboy Cheyenne's show, Iblis Manifestations. Thought he seemed like a very nice guy to me. I thought it was a very thoughtful and interesting conversation. Of course, I'm a massive fan of Ecclese's music, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having him on the podcast. I would say he probably differs a fair bit from the lads of TERZIJ De HORDE. But like I've said before, this is a show for the free thinkers. I'm never going to host someone who I know for a fact to be, a scumbag who's involved in sketchy stuff. But I don't know that Naz is. I think that a lot of it is taken out of context. It seems the big smoking gun everybody seems to have about him is that he likes Jordan Peterson, which to me, coming from people who clutch onto the fucking childish drivel that's spewed from the pen of Karl Marx, is rich. Karl Marx was an avowed racist, an avowed homophobe, and 100% scumbag. And I'm not going to be lectured by anybody on morals or anything else if you in any way, shape, or form support Marxism, or if you are one of those people that run around in their Che Guevara t-shirts pretending to be fucking edgy. It's just, it's I was talking to Cheyenne about this as well. I feel like there will be, in the future, two separate scenes that form. They will run in parallel, work in tandem. But as far as I'm concerned, these cancel mobs and these woke idiots that have infiltrated the metal scene, they're not part of a scene I want to be part of. So I feel like there has to be something, there has to be a point of separation. I don't want to engage with them. I don't think this podcast is meant for them. You know, you either need to be open-minded if you're going to listen to this podcast, or go listen to something else. Metal Sucks has their own podcast as well. I'm sure you'll find all the echo chamber nonsense that you need on there. All right. I was about to say, let's see if we can listen to one more song on here, and then we'll move over to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Orthodox premiere new song and music video. Orthodox are premiering Rabid God, the second single of their upcoming studio album Proceed. The latter sees its official release on June 30th via Alone Records. No idea who Orthodox are, but I'm willing to give them a go. This is pretty cool. It says here, bassist vocalist Marco Serrato comments, Boria and I allowed ourselves to try everything we wanted while we worked as a duo. With Ricardo back in the band, we wanted to give him a lot of room to contribute as much of his ideas as possible. Rabid God is one of his many contributions for this album. He created this intricate puzzle based on that simple riff. We arranged the whole thing at the rehearsal room with a great job by Boria on drums. Agree. Just the first 45 seconds, those drums sound outstanding. Who, like so many other times, plays as lead drums. Then I took care of the voice and lyrics, but it was Billy Anderson who put the magic touch to it. It's one of the songs where Billy's contribution is most palpable. Not only during the recording, but his ideas for the mix gave the song an extra dimension. We are really satisfied with it. I think this sounds fucking cool. Let's give it some more time. Love it. I think it's fucking great. And I think we've had a pretty good haul of new music this week. At least new music to listen to on this segment of the show. There are times.
How do you feel?
What
are you happy?
Fuck is that racket?
Are you happy?
Why is that crap even playing? I can't stand ads that just start playing. It's just the most obnoxious thing on the face of the earth. On general principle now, I will not support the marathon of mental health. So, anyways, as I was saying before I was so fucking rudely interrupted, there are times when I do the segment and you kind of, sift through the dross and there's just nothing really to talk about. But this week we've been very fortunate. So, let's see what it says over on the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music. Fozzie's Rich Ward and Rancid perform at AEW's Double or Nothing pay-per-view wrestling event. I haven't watched that yet, but I did see the results. It looked very cool. I'm going to watch it probably later this evening. Watch new Deicide lineup perform at Maryland Deathfest. I spoke about Maryland Deathfest earlier, and one thing I just want to add. So I was reading with interest some of the comments and some of the things that people were making on Twitter about it. Aside from the flash mobs of the woke Taliban trying to stop anyone wearing an Achilles t-shirt because, my God, the apocalypse will take place if you don't. There was a person who committed suicide at the show, and inexplicably the show just carried on as though nothing had happened. And then there was also a video that did the rounds of an extraordinarily unattractive woman who, by the looks of things, jumped on the face of her boyfriend, who then proceeded to give her live cunnilingus in front of everybody whilst Autopsy was playing. I honestly, between the trash that was written on Twitter and all of the things that I saw in these videos and the live suicide, I would frankly rather spend an afternoon in fucking Costco than have gone to Maryland Deathfest. Which is a shame, because I remember being a young'un and very often looking at the lineup and going, man, that'd be the greatest thing ever. I wish I could experience it. Fuck that shit. That's not for me. If I want to go hang around scum of the earth, I can do so without paying a cent. But let's have a quick gander at Deicide playing live with a new lineup.
Try fiction.
By the way, I'm just going to say this because I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. If you're listening to this, this is off somebody's this is cell phone footage. I can't stand when a band turn their back to the crowd. I don't give a fuck if you need a drink break or something like that, but keep the engagement. When you turn your back on the audience, I think you break the engagement. You break the connection. I think it looks. I just don't like it. It makes me feel like I'm sat watching a band rehearse. It doesn't feel like I'm watching a show. Anyways, I've skipped ahead, so we don't have to hopefully experience too much of the sight of Glenn drinking a beer. But let's see what it sounds like. Also say this, I don't like Glenn's vocal style circa everything beyond the 2000s. I think that he did a great job on Dechristianize and on Icons of Evil. And there's been a couple of performances that he did with DSI that weren't bad, but I live, it lacks power. All of the craziness and the evil of Legion and of DSI and Once Upon a Cross, he just doesn't have it anymore. And I know that's slaying the sacred cow. You guys know how big a fan I am of Deicide anyway. And, I'll always be excited about a new Deicide record. If I can, I'll always go and see them play. But that's just that it doesn't sound like he's bothering to even pronounce the words anymore. There's just, and for me, that there's something lacking in that, especially when I know what he's done in the past. And people can say, oh, well, the guy's old, but, Sam Bean of Werewolves is old as well. Listen to what he sounds like. Chuck Billy's old. The man had brain cancer, for Christ's sake. Listen to the way he vocals. So, anyways. Exorder enlists former Cannibal Corpse guitarist Pat O'Brien. I actually didn't know Pat was a free man. It says here, thrash metal pioneers Exorder recruited former Cannibal Corpse guitarist Pat O'Brien for their performance Sunday night at the Maryland Deathfest in Baltimore, Maryland. The gig took place 3 months after guitarist Marcy Montesseri left Exorder. If I butchered Marcy's name or surname, I'm sorry. Explaining at the time in a statement that he decided to no longer be a part of it, O'Brien made headlines more than 3 years ago when he was arrested for burglary and assaulting a police officer while his Florida home was in flames. At the time of the arrest, deputies said he burglarized a house and charged at a deputy with a knife. Hope Pat's feeling better. Be curious to know how come he has not been in jail for or incarcerated for a lengthier period of time after that little stunt. But anyways, King Diamond says Merciful Fate will play new 9-minute song on upcoming tour. It's quite a monster. Looking forward to that. Jane's Addictions, Dave Navarro and his battle with long COVID. I wasn't laughing at that. I was actually laughing at something below that. Late Pantera drummer Vinnie Paul's Arlington, Texas house has reportedly been demolished. You can hear the Pantera diehards weeping as the bulldozers steamed in. In fairness, it was a very 90s house. I've one of my guilty pleasures is watching this guy. I can't remember his name. I keep forgetting. Anyway, he's awesome. You guys will know what I'm talking about. They lampooned him on South Park as well. But he does Ennis Yilmiser. That's his name. He does these tours of like ultra expensive homes, and I mean some of the stuff that he does is incredible. But I had a gander at the photos that they posted of that house, and it's no great shakes. Curious to know who would have bought it though, just to smash it down to the ground. It's probably Al Gore. His wife Tipper put him up to it. Let's see. What else is there? City of London to unveil blue plaque honouring Jimi Hendrix. Probably one of the only good things that Sadiq the imbecile Khan has overseen in his time as mayor. The rest of what he's overseen has been the decline and destruction of a once great city. But anyways, Cannibal Corpse drummers Umbilicus Project releases first single. I spoke about this last week, and I remember saying I was wondering whether they were going to put out a single. So let's hear what it sounds like. We'll read just a quick snippet from the article. And as I'm scrolling down to the snippet, I immediately see things that make me worry. But anyways, we'll find out whether the worry is founded or not. But when Umbilicus's formation was first announced last December, Mazurkowitz said in a statement, Umbilicus was formed in the summer of 2020 and driven by our love of rock and roll from the late 60s, 70s, and early 80s. I've been listening to well-known bands like Grand Funk Railroad, Bad Company, and Steppenwolf, and not so well-known bands like Sir Lord Baltimore and Lucifer's Friend for the last 20 years or so now. The more I listened to these bands, the more I wanted to play music like this. It's just so much fun to sit back and groove out and play by complete feel without beating my body down. To just play some pure hard rock. So that would explain why they're not on Metal Blade. Let's hear what Umbilicus's new single, Hello Future, sounds like. It sounds marginally better than the fucking crap that Chris Adler did after Lamb of God. That's about the only positive thing that I can say. That is complete nonsense. Let's see what else. Decapitated taps Machine Head's Rob Flynn for Iconoclast music video. I've not even bothered to listen to that whole album because everything I've heard of it so far is fucking terrible. And it's such a tragedy because that band at their peak put out such great music. I just don't understand why what happened to them that they decided to just become so ordinary and so dull. Speaking of ordinary and dull, Ted Nugent says calls for more gun control are heartless, soulless, cruel, and dishonest. I have to say, I mean, you guys know that you know roughly where I stand politically, but I must admit, I do kind of I do look at some of the gun control laws or the gun laws in America and just shake my head. It's astounding to me that you have to be 21 years old to buy a beer, but you can go and buy an AR-15 when you're 18 years old. I think it's fucking insane. I mean, I'm all for responsible gun ownership. I definitely wouldn't disarm the nation as some people have suggested, because I think, having come from a country where they did that and having seen the failings of it, if you tell the citizenry to turn over their guns, the criminals are not going to do so. So you're just especially in a country where the gun culture is as entrenched as it is in America, you're basically just going to create a population of sitting ducks, who will fall to the predations of the criminal element of society. But that being said, there definitely needs to be serious rigor around, owning a license to, having a license to own a firearm, going through appropriate background checks. I mean, this bullshit of just being able to walk into a gun show and, you stock up on whatever you want, I think is fucking insane. And then I also stand by what Chris Rock said many years ago about how to stop gun violence is just charge $5,000 for a bullet. And all of these problems will go away. But I mean, I shouldn't joke. What happened in Texas, and I know recently happened in Chattanooga again, is absolutely terrible. If for any reason somebody who was affected by that is listening to that, again, my sincerest condolences goes out to you. That is not something that any parent should have to go through. And as a parent myself, I mean, that's the worst nightmare I can possibly imagine for anybody. So, and like I said, my view is all for responsible gun ownership, but definitely I think America needs some serious checks and balances when it comes to that. And hopefully somewhere someone's going to step up and actually do something about it, because let's be honest, every single election cycle, every single time there's there's a mass shooting, the Democrats kind of wave the flag and say we need to do something. They never do jack shit. And I don't think that the Republicans have the will to do anything because of how much they are supported by the gun lobby. So there's a bit of a stalemate going on there, and I think it's a tragedy. I think the other thing that's a tragedy as well is the fact that you actually have people looking at this and saying it's not a mental health issue. I mean, it sure as fuck is. The no sane, well-adjusted human being one day decides I'm going to take a gun, shoot my grandma, and then go to a school and start firing at the kids over there. When I was reflecting on it, I kind of feel like they almost need to treat this like they did serial killers in the 70s, where they were working on the science around criminal profiling and on how to prevent this. I know it's easier said than done, but maybe that's one of the ways in which to tackle it. Start looking for the precursors, the folks that maybe meet certain criteria. You can start monitoring more closely. But, either way, whatever people are doing right now is definitely not helping. Jimmy Dore, who is a YouTuber I'm growing increasingly fond of, he did a really, really good piece on his views on mass shooting or mass shootings with Kerp of the Carl Dunnigan show. It's Kurt Metzger if you don't watch the Carl Dunnigan show. But I thought he had it spot on. Now I do think he probably leans more towards full disarmament of the entire country, which I think is not viable. He has said that he kind of flipped back and forth for most of his life, but anyways, I just thought I would just mention that. I did see that Alex Skolnick was screaming all about, fuck your thoughts and prayers to Ted Cruz and whatnot. Funnily enough, I didn't really see him say anything when the mass shooting happened in Brooklyn. Didn't see him say anything when the mass shooting happened at the church in California, which to me suggests that even though he and I probably agree on a fair bit when it comes to this, I feel the place he's coming from as he's thumping his chest online is disingenuous, and it is really because the difference is Texas is a red state, and the two shootings that I mentioned previously occurred in blue states. So this to him is an opportunity to dunk on people that disagree with him politically. I might be completely wrong on that, but I think broadly speaking, that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to the gun control issue in America. Is it becomes or it turns into political opportunism at its worst, as opposed to people working together bilaterally to try and figure out a way to solve the problem. And that's, unfortunately, the cause of a lot of this dysfunction. Anyways, let's move on. See if there's something to lift our spirits. Ex-Motley Crue singer John Corabi says writing his autobiography was a cleansing and tedious experience, bros. Maybe the universe has gifted us a final article to talk about before we end off the news for this week. Former Motley Crue singer John Corabi spoke to Australia's May the Rock Be With You about his upcoming autobiography, Horseshoes and Hand Grenades, which is tentatively due on June 14th via Rare Bird Books. It was written with the help of Motley Crue historian author Paul Miles. I imagine Paul was very good at deciphering pencil sketches and stickmen drawings to be able to make sense of all of Corabi's notes. But it says here, regarding the writing process for the book, Corabi said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net, "It was tedious. I wrote it with a guy from Melbourne, Australia, and I was like, speak proper English, bro. He was very thorough with his research, and we kind of conducted it like an interview." Now, that's one thing I've also never quite understood. Like, why would you take a writing credit for something when basically you've got a ghostwriter interviewing you? Maybe he's not going to do it, but we'll see. "He was very thorough with his research, so thorough, in fact, that my anus still hurts from the rectal probing he gave me while doing one of those interviews." And then he put it in like a transcript form and sent it to me, and I went through it and crisscrossed stuff off, and then I rewrote things and I sent it back. Blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting a fucking stomach ache over this. But at the same time, I think it was a bit cleansing as well. So it was cool. Definitely an overall positive experience. P.S. Fuck Trump. Anyway, folks, I think that is about as much as we're going to be able to squeeze out of this stone for this week. The news for the year of our Lord, May 30th, 2022 is done. Big thank you to everyone who has stuck around until the very end, and massive thank you to Joost and Johan of TERZIJ DE HORDE for coming on the show. Great guests. Like I said, I definitely feel like there's a part 2 in there, and I would love to have them back on again. Also, make sure that you check out that record. I'm going to say the name again because I love it so much. In one of these, I Am Your Enemy. It's available on Consoling Sounds. Also, make sure you check out Modern Primitive by Septicflesh, and then make sure that you check out the band I'm about to play us out with. My man Scott Bamford sent me a message about them right as I was actually discovering them for myself. They're called DOLDRUM. They're out of Denver, Colorado. They have got a record out on Catafalque, I think is the record label's name, called The Knocking, or The Story of the Sound That Preceded Their Disappearance. The name is a mouthful, so is the music. Wherever it is that you are, whatever it is that you're doing, stay safe, stay healthy. This is DOLDRUM with The Knocking, and I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.